An annual survey of public trust in Canada suggests that Canadians' faith in governments is rebounding as the COVID-19 pandemic begins to fade. The 2023 CanTrust Index, published by Proof Strategies, surveyed 1,500 adults online early last month. Last year's survey saw new lows in the polls, with just 22% of respondents saying they trusted governments. This comes after 2 years of pandemic anxiety, lockdowns, and ricocheting COVID-19 rules. But this year, that number rose to a surprising 37%, the highest it's been since 2018. Well, joining us now to discuss this survey and what it means is Mr. Bruce McLellan, the CEO of Proof Strategies. Mr. McLellan, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, looking at this survey, we found that trust in government is up to 37%. So, what does this mean for confidence in the government overall among Canadians?
We do our survey annually in January, and we use a 7-point scale to assess trust by Canadians in all sorts of areas, institutions, and so on. So, if you think back to January a year ago, we had been through the pandemic for almost 2 years. And when just it was starting to look better, we were all hit with Omicron, a new variant. So, Canadians were in a bit of a dark space last January. Contrast that to our 2023 survey, which we just did a few weeks ago in January, and we see that Canadians have sort of lifted their spirits from the darkest point of the pandemic and are returning to a more traditional position of their trust in government. So, as you noted, the trust in government as a category in general jumped 15% in 1 year, and that's a jump that we just don't normally see in any of our questions around any topics that we probe on. But it is a return to normal for trust in government. We also ask questions about what do Canadians expect from government, and a good majority of Canadians agree with the statement that they think there's a role for government to be involved and make things better for average citizens. So there's a tradition of government involvement in Canada. We have public healthcare, we have public education, we have many other public services that Canadians hold dearly, and they're returning to trusting of those.
And what's interesting is, as you mentioned, it's really rare for surveys to find growth in trust. So, can you unpack that for us and tell us why it's so rare for trust to grow like this?
Well, there's a saying among all those of us who study trust, we say that trust arrives by Pony Express and leaves in a Maserati. And what we mean by that is that it's very hard to work and build trust. But then if you do something to lose trust, it leaves in a hurry and it's hard to get back. So we know that rebuilding, restoring trust is hard. And we've seen that over the years in how we track the prime minister, where certain events that happened caused a drop in trust in Mr. Trudeau. And then he could never quite come back. So this is true in many cases of organizations when they do something that rocks or breaks trust, it's hard to return. So to see this 15% jump it's very unprecedented. Normally we see stability, and then when there's been an event, we see low trust. You might be interested to know that this year we added Hockey Canada to our trust survey, and trust in Hockey Canada comes in at only 30%, which is quite low for a not-for-profit organization.
And for some broader perspective on this, how do we compare to other G7 countries when it comes to the overall trust in government? Do we have any information on that?
Well, we know that Canadians do have higher trust in government than our American friends. I can talk about some comparisons with the United States, and we know that Canadians have higher trust in government than in the United States. Canadians also have higher trust in their elections and the election outcomes. There's room for improvement in Canada, but generally speaking, we trust our electoral system more than Americans do. You'll also find in trust surveys that there's a connection to partisanship. So the supporters of the party not in power are typically not as trusting as the people who have their party in power, and we see that ebb and flow. Although I would say that in Canada there's less of that polarization than there is, say, in the United States.
All right, just a quick 15 seconds left here, Mr. McLellan. But what would you say is the main message here for policymakers from the study?
Canadians are not happy with the performance of political parties. 56% of them say that political parties are a divisive influence on Canada. So we really need politicians to take steps to build trust, not tear it down.
All right, Mr. McLellan, thank you again for your time today.
Thank you.